a United States.
The opinions of third worlders don't matter. Like, I don't care what some illiterate goat herder thinks in Afghanistan. It doesn't matter.
By the way, I don't listen to the guy, I don't follow his streams, I don't watch his streams. However, this is the same individual who said not long ago that the Palestinians deserved what happened to them, you know, being genocide by the Israelis, because they're inferior culture.
These people are not your allies. They are not the same as us. They come from an inferior culture that is horrible. It kills people for their identity, and it is directly antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture in all ways.
Now this cockroach is back at it again, but this time he is addressing the Afghani people and other people from the Middle East, calling them third worlders and, you know, people from the shithole countries. Yes, he literally used these words.
Do I give a fuck about the opinions of a bunch of third worlders in regards to what my country should do? I do not. You shouldn't. They shouldn't. Because why would I take somebody's opinion that is from a shithole in these countries? And by the way, these are shitholes. Many of these countries are shitholes. And don't let anybody teach you or tell you that, oh, it's America's fault. No, it's not. The ones that America has invaded are shitholes. The ones that America hasn't invaded or Britain hasn't invaded, they're shitholes too. They're shitholes because the people made them shitholes.
This is definitely the reason why this cockroach again got suspended or banned on Twitch, for this very particular reason. You know, it's not just a practice of your freedom of speech. This is literally dehumanizing those people by calling them those names. Okay, you are saying that, oh, they deserve to be invaded by the Western countries like US and Britain, right? Because they were shithole countries to begin with. This Zionist genocide sympathizer is okay with those countries being, you know, completely massacred because they're shitholes, as he calls it. This is literally what the Zionists been doing this entire time, literally dehumanizing those people before you can invade them, so people do not have any sympathy towards them. But in fact, if you do a little bit of history research, you can find out that all those countries, especially in the Middle East, for example, Iraq, before the invasion of America to it, they had one of the highest rate of literacy. They were literally had like around 85 to 90% of literacy. People were well thought. People were well educated. The same thing with Libya. Before the NATO and America invaded that country and destroyed the whole country and killed their leader. They had 90% of literacy as well. They were doing fine. They were doing great. And now you're calling them these names, trying to dehumanize them to justify your country's invasion to those countries and killing the people of those countries. That's so disgusting.
And whenever I talk about third worlders and third worldism, I'm not even really talking about a geography. I'm talking about an ideology. And that ideology is the idea that disrespect should be met with violence, the idea that, you know, crime, dysfunction, discord, and chaos in society should be expected. They're part and parcel of living in a modern city. And having people, you know, like, oh, well, you can't say certain things because they might offend people or they'll make them mad. The idea that getting angry about something is a justification to break the law. This is what I'm really talking about with third worldism. Things that, and it's actually a good thing to not have a bunch of crazy fent zombies on the street. It's actually a good thing to have people that aren't living on the sidewalk. It's actually a good thing to have a, you know, civilized discussion that doesn't resort to violence whenever you hear something that makes you angry. But for some people, this is the third worldist mindset. It is the aggrandizement of the base interests, the base desires, and the lowest common denominator of mankind. Being a third worlder and being a third worldist, yes, it's a geography, but it's more importantly a mindset.
Now he's equivocating. He's trying to completely switch his narrative. Oh, I don't talk about the, you know, shithole countries, those third worlders, you know, geographically. I'm not talking about Afghanistan. I'm not talking about Palestine. I'm not talking about any of this country. I'm talking about the mindset. Yeah. And then he goes and describes exactly his country and his cities and his states. This is exactly what you find. This is exactly what's happening if you go to any major city in the United States. This is what this first world country, suffer from. And this is exactly the description he gives for third worlders. This is not something that these third world countries geographically suffer from. You will never find, people getting offended because you insult their religion or whatever. You did worse. You literally bombed them. Do you think they care about what you say about their religion and their culture? You literally bombed them and you killed their children and women. They have other things to worry about. Don't worry about them being offended with your words, okay? This is something you suffered from. This is something that is going on in your first world superior white man country, not them. Okay, you literally shot someone in the head just because you don't like his opinions. Okay, so it sounds like you are the one who's living in a third world country.
The Greek Senate, or the Greeks, the Romans, we figured this out in Western society, in Western culture. We've realized that you can't run a society whenever you have people that act this way.
The irony is that this dude is the same one who says, oh, like the women in Afghanistan, they're like not treated in a good way. And then at the same time, he refers to the Greeks and the Romans as if it was a civilization that had some kind of a superior high moral backgrounds, which is in fact the opposite. You do realize that those people would bury and kill their own newborn daughters if it turns out to be a female, right? Because females, they didn't even have any status back then, when it comes to the Romans and the Greeks. I don't understand why you're pointing to those civilizations as one of your examples for high, morals and stuff like that. That's ridiculous. I'm pretty sure that Afghanistan and Taliban, they're better when it comes to treating women than the Greeks and the Romans. That's a very terrible, terrible example to give right now. They literally killed their own daughters just because they're female, and they do not want female. They wanted, dudes.
If Twitch thinks Afghanistan has such great opinions that should be listened to, maybe they should apply Afghanistan's opinions to women on Twitch. How about that? But they won't, because they also agree with me too. I just was the one that said it. But everybody thinks this. And I have nothing, by the way. Oh, I said illiterate. They have 37% literacy. Flip a coin, I'm right.
Flip a coin, I'm right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you Googled that before you said it, because that's exactly literacy today in Afghanistan. 37% exactly. But I wonder why. I wonder why the literacy is so low right now in Afghanistan. Not like just, the America was bombing their schools for literally 20 years. Non-stop bombing and killing their children. Like, imagine you waking up in the morning, sending your daughters and sons to school for them not to come back. Because the US or whoever is invading their country, the white superior men, thought that their country is a shithole and deserve to be bombed, so they bombed their schools, and your sons or daughters never came back. Okay, and now you're mocking them because they have such a low literacy in their country. They're working on it. Don't worry about that. Please don't, bomb them and kill their children just because they're literate. Okay? Please don't do that. You disgusting human cockroach. And yes, when it comes to Taliban or Afghanistan's governments coming and taking over Twitch, I wish they do that, because that's gonna, fix this whole inflation you have. Because like those platforms today, they're nothing but, a promotion platforms for hoes, promoting their OnlyFans pages. And you got goners and simps. That's all it is. If you got Taliban, they're going to fix this whole inflation in no time. And you know what? What I think, it's very simple. I think the Afghani people just took back their government, and now they're trying their best to protect their women. If they think that their women shouldn't go to school after a certain time, then so be it. That's their government. They're doing their best to, find what's best for their women. That's none of your business. Why are you trying to enforce your so-called superior morality on those people? None of your business. You already stripped all your women. You stripped the whites, you stripped the black, you stripped the Latinos, the Asians. You got all these women to look to whenever you want, but no, you want more. You want all these women country in this shithole countries to take off their clothes so you can jerk off to them. You sick bastard. This is what it is. This is exactly what it is. Those people who are saying, oh, we need to liberate this woman. These women are so, mistreated and all. What they're actually saying is that they don't want to see them in clothes. They want to see them naked on their screens. That's all it is. So hats off for the Afghani people for protecting their women. I'm pretty sure you're doing your best while the Western societies suffering from this whole inflation.
These people talk about the Epstein files. They have their own Epstein files. It's called the marriage records. It's called Tuesday. They have child marriage. It's legal. I don't want to have that here. I don't want to have anything to do with that here.
And last but not least, of course, he's going to be talking about the Epstein files. I know he cannot help it but defend it, because this is what Zionists do. Right now, as soon as someone talks about, Epstein files, and turns out all the elites are involved in this, and they're protected. I don't know if you saw the millions of documents. They literally hid the names of those criminals who are involved. And people are saying, because if those people were exposed, then they're going to have a civil war. Why? Well, because all the important people are involved. And they say, oh, well, they have their own Epstein files, something that is called child marriage, which is something that does not exist. In those countries, yes, there's some small minority of people who give their, daughters in marriage while they're still a child. Why? Not because of religion and even culture, actually. It's because of poor. They're being poor and ignorant. That's the only reason why they give their daughters too early for marriage. But if you go to even Afghanistan today, the age of consent when it comes to marriage is 18 and 16 for women. And by that time, the women would be physically and mentally matured. Actually, even in America today, there is a lot of states where they don't even have the age of consent for marriage. Okay, so if you're saying that these shithole countries, they're suffering from, people, getting married as a child, they have this child marriages. Start from your own shithole country. How about that? Start from your own states. How about you question your own politicians about that? Okay? Yeah, so every time you hear someone, go from the Epstein files to immediately attacking other countries like Middle Eastern countries or whatever, or even the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, accusing him of all kind of things. This guy is trying to switch the focus from the catastrophe, of exposing his leaders to make you focus on something else, basically. All right. And that's very, obvious, especially those Zionist sympathizers, genocide sympathizers. This is the exact language they use. All right. Every single time, they cannot help it. And if you see it, you cannot unsee it. Anyway, that's all for me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.